Today I will give you an as simple and as easy as possible MOC guide on how the enemies work. So let's start with the first wave of the first node and let's get to the big cool horse we got here. The thing about him you might have noticed is that he can apply these moons on your head. And he can apply it with some attacks of his, like with a blast attack and this locking ability of his, which looks something like this. So Hereby and Mayday have been locked here, and you can see that on his next turn he will attack them and apply the moons on their head. But why are these moons a problem for us? Well, they on themselves are not the problem, but when you have two of them on one character, a bad thing happens. And that is that when you have two, luckily for us, they will go away, that's nice, but unfortunately we will take some damage and we will have a high probability to get entangled. And this thing is the big problem, because when you get entangled, you cannot do anything until the start of your turn. So even if you have a cleanser in your team, the damage would have already been done, since when the entanglement hits you, your action will be immediately delayed. So even if you cleanse it, yes, nice, now you can do something, you don't have to wait until the start of your next turn, but your action would have already been delayed. So when you get to the point of having two moons on your head, I just recommend you to restart. But getting to that point is quite difficult, since removing these moons from your head is quite simple. Since all you got to do is ult. When you ult, then the moon on your head will go away. As simple as that. And that will just basically happen automatically. In the best case scenario then. And also another nice thing is that when he locks onto you, this horse, when you weakness break him, then the locked allies won't be locked anymore. Which is also pretty nice. So that means getting two moons onto a single ally of yours is quite difficult for a horse to do. Okay then, let's go to this other enemy right here. This big boy here. And let's see him in his normal state here. The first thing you might notice about him is that he has stacks. And we can reduce those stacks by 1 every time we attack him. And we want to do that since when he has 0 stacks, a couple of things will happen. 1, he will take damage, always appreciated. His action will be delayed a bit. And every time you attack him now, when he has 0 stacks, he will take additional damage. But the best thing is that the character that attacked him and reduced those stacks to 0 will get a bit of energy. So plus a little bit of energy to the character that reduced the stacks to 0. And he regenerates these stacks to 6 out of 6 at the end of his turn. But this enemy is not the enemy who has these stacks, since he can summon 2 enemies on the field who also make use of the same mechanism with the stacks. But luckily for us, they have now 3 out of 3 stacks. So reducing their stacks to 0 is a bit easier. But before we go into those smaller enemies, I need to tell you one thing. And that is that this enemy, he's not really that special. He just does like this sweeping attacks, which attacks the first 3 enemies of your team or the last 3 enemies of your team. He doesn't really do anything that hinders your team, like entangling you or freezing you. He can just go into this charging state where he is holding his sword like this. And you can see in the action bar that he will do that charging attack next. And this charging attack is just like a big AoE attack, whose damage is distributed among your team, which is indicated by this chain. So these chains appear on the top of your head when this enemy is charging, indicating that that special attack of his, its damage will be evenly distributed. But we can cancel that attack of his by just weakness break him. And now we can go into his summons. These summons of his are quite irritating, since they have a small probability when they attack you to apply this thing on your head, the thing with the stars. This thing on itself doesn't do anything, but when you have this on your head and you get attacked by any other enemy, then your action will be immediately delayed and you cannot do anything until the start of your next turn. So just remember that when you see this starting on your head, that 1, you cleanse it, or you just wait out and hope that you don't get attacked by any enemy, or you just restart. Since if you get attacked, your action will be delayed, damage would have already been done. Even if you cleanse that thing on your head, your action would have already been delayed. And there's also a thing like when this enemy attacks you and he has 0 stacks, that he has a chance to apply this thing onto himself, but that situation like really never happens. Since when this enemy has 0 stacks, he should have already been dead by then. And now let's get to the big bug. This bug is quite simple, luckily for us, since 1, he can summon bugs onto the field, as you might have noticed. And he can summon 2 types of bugs. In the first phase of this, he can summon these clones. And in the second phase, he can summon another bug, which is like a bomb bug, you might say. And that bug looks like this. When you see this bug, you need to make sure that you kill him as fast as possible before his second turn. Since, as you might see in the action bar here, he is glowing a bit red. And when he gets a turn and he's glowing red, he will like explode on you, like on 3 allies of yours. It's a blast attack. And it's a chance to outrage you. That means that for the next 2 turns of that outraged ally or allies of yours, you cannot do anything. Yes, you can cleanse it, but you don't want to get to the point that this bug explodes on you. It can make surviving a bit more difficult for you. So when you see him glowing like this, or in the action bar glowing red, make sure you kill him. Okay, back to the big bug. He himself just like has a chance to apply wind shear on you or trigger wind shear. He doesn't do anything that hinders the flow of your team. The only special thing about him is that he can enter this charging state, where he is also indicated red like this, which means that he will do a big attack, which says that the more bugs, the more damage that charging attack of his will do. And this attack will also cleanse all the crowd control on the small bugs and cleanse the weakness break of all the small bugs. So basically any debuff small bugs have, they will all be removed. So when he does this charging attack, it might hit quite hard on you. So how do we make sure he does not do this charging attack? Well, by weakness breaking this big bug, that's it. Oh, and by the way, we of course got this other enemy, which is a clone bug. He can just clone himself and his attacks has a chance to apply winch on you. That's it. But the real small bug problem is the bomb bug, of course. Make sure you kill him ASAP. Since when you kill bugs, the bomb bug or the small bugs, it doesn't matter which one, all the enemies will get the vulnerability debuff, which is pretty nice, which means they will get increased damage from your attacks. And whenever a bug dies, the big bug will lose like 3 to 4% HP, which is always appreciated, of course. But now let's get to the second note, the first wave. And the whole thing about this wave is basically that favorably, you want to have a healer in your team. You can maybe also manage with Aventurin, but the healer is quite helpful because all these enemies, apart from this enemy, when they attack you, a portion of your lost HP will be converted into corrosion, which is indicated by this red thing in your HP bar. And what this thing means is that, like I said, a portion of your lost HP by the attacks of the enemies is converted into this red thing. But also when you consume your own HP, all of that consumed HP will be converted into this corrosion. But why is this red thing important for us? Well, when you attack enemies and the more enemies you attack, what will happen is that you will restore a bit of that HP back, depending on how many enemies you have attacked. But you don't want to be bound by this, since like for example with Fei Xiao, attacking many enemies at the same time is quite difficult since she's just a single target damage dealer. So having a consistent healer in your team like Hyacinth is quite helpful to get that red HP up. Why do we want to get rid of it? Well, when you get rid of this red HP, you will get a damage bonus for 1 turn, which means that your next attack will do increased damage. Sure, for Robin it's not quite useful, but for example Clara or Fei Xiao it's always appreciated, of course, the extra damage. So having a healer in your team, when you heal that red HP back with your healer, everyone can get that damage bonus immediately without being bound to attacking as many enemies as possible. So you just do one Hyacinth skill, then everyone will get that damage bonus for free. Well, they even get the damage bonus for free when you get attack scene heals the whole team, when one gets attack of yours and all that stuff. But you can of course also play with a shielder this node, but that healer will give you a small advantage by doing a bit of extra, since the enemies in this MOC, in this site especially, are mad tanky. So this damage bonus is always appreciated. But that's quite difficult since you might have noticed that these enemies can literally one-shot you when you blink. Since if you start with this enemy, you might have noticed that he can summon these arrow summons of his. And these arrow summons of his don't do anything by themselves, but when this enemy attacks you, then these enemies will also attack you immediately. And they do AoE attacks. So basically you can get one shot if you don't have a panic heal or a shielder. So make sure that when you see that this thing gets his turn, that you have your panic heal ready, since you can get one shot by him and his summons of his. Sure, you don't have to worry about that, but if you play for example Gallagher, make sure you hold on onto his ult so you can heal back your lost HP back immediately. So okay, we know that these summons just do an AoE attack and damage they deal, a portion of that will be converted into corrosion, that red HP. What does this enemy do then? Well, nothing that special. The only really special thing about him is that you get some of these summons. Oh, and the nice thing is though, when you kill a summon of his, he will lose a bit of HP, which is always appreciated. But the really interesting thing about this enemy is that he can enter this charging stage, which is indicated with his head like opening up a bit. And this special attack of his is a big attack that says that the more corrosion we have, so that red HP, now we don't have any luckily, but when we have that, the more we have of it, the more damage this attack of his will do. So that's another reason why we want to make sure that we heal back as much as possible that red HP to get that damage boost and to make sure that his special attack doesn't one-shot us. Or you just play a shielder, that's also possible too, of course, like Aventurin. But that's the guideline. Make sure you heal back as much as possible if you have a healer. And how do we make sure that we cancel the special attack if we cannot manage to heal back that corrosion? Well, you just weakness break him, as easy as that. Then that attack of his gets cancelled. But now let's get to this enemy right here. As you can see, he can also charge. He's charging here, since his normal state looks like this, as you can see. And his charging state, his arms get like a bit blocky. Well, this enemy just does some bouncing attacks and can also convert a bit of his damage stone into corrosion. But he can also absorb your allies' their corrosion. And that is how he gets these stacks of his. And when he has a certain amount of stacks, like 3 or 2 something, it doesn't matter what the count is actually, since you don't want to get to that point to begin with. But when he gets that certain amount of stacks, let's say 3, then he enters this charging state. And when he does this charging state attack of his, he will convert a portion of your character's their HP to corrosion. But like I said, you do not want to get to that point to begin with, since when he wants to absorb your allies their corrosion, since he gets +1 stack for every ally that has corrosion, let's say Clara has one. But if there are no allies in your team that has corrosion, so he's not in his charging state, we are here, let's say that, he wants to absorb some of your character's corrosion, no one has it, what happens is that he will reduce his own defense, which is always appreciated, since like we know, enemies of this MOC are really tanky, so that extra defense reduction is always helpful for us. And that's basically all you need to know about this side of the note. Make sure that if you have corrosion, that you heal that back, or play a shielder to not get corrosion to begin with. But when you heal that corrosion back with a healer or by attacking as many enemies as possible, you get that damage bonus for your next attack, which is pretty nice, of course. And then yeah, of course, we got this one enemy here on the sidelines. This enemy here doesn't do really anything special. He just does some AoE attacks, which are evenly distributed. And he will cast this AoE attack of his also when any enemy dies. So if this dog thing dies, this thing will do an attack immediately. But he is no biggie, doesn't really hinder our team, so you can just basically die on the sidelines. But now let's get to Hoolay. The fight against Hoolay is pretty straightforward. You can just keep it simple, since you might have noticed he has these stacks, and these stacks are shared among enemies. So every enemy has the same amount of stacks. So if Hoolay gets a stack, Small Wolves also gets a stack. When he has 6 stacks, he goes into a state. So all the Small Wolves too. And so how do they get these stacks to begin with? Well, when any enemy attacks, they get 1 stack. And when they enter this special state of theirs, which is indicated like this, also called the Moon Rage state, all the wolves, their speed will be increased and they will get extra abilities. Like with the small wolves, one of them can heal when they attack and the other can apply bleed onto you. But they are not really the problem, since Hoolay is the problem. Because as you can see, we have these points right here. And it's a battle between points. We want to make sure that we attack him as many times as possible and get his stacks to 8. That's because when we get his stacks to 8, he will take a big chunk of toughness reduction and a bit of damage. But that reduced toughness of his is always appreciated to weakness break him ASAP, since when you weakness break him, he will go out of the state. But okay then, how does this wall point battle work? Well, like I said, when you attack him, we get 1 point and he loses 1 point. So when we attack him, the points will be distributed like this, 5 out of 3. And when we attack him another time, it will be 6 out of 2. But when he attacks us, then it will be 5 out of 3. And when he gets 8 points, then he will do like a big attack, which does quite some damage. So our objective is basically to attack him as many times as possible. And that's why I have Clara in my team, since Hoolay gets pretty fast. He does many attacks. And when he attacks us, Clara counterattacks. So we are always one-upping him. But if you're in this point battle the whole time and we cannot get the 8 points and he cannot get the 8 points, after some time he will just automatically go out of this Moon Rage state, which is indicated by this icon here in the action bar. So he will automatically go out of this Moon Rage state, but getting the points to 8 for us is the objective, since like we said, he will lose toughness and get a bit of damage. And apart from that, there is nothing really that interesting about him. He just does some blast, AoE attacks, whatever he is doing. He has like this attack where he kills all the wolves on the field and attacks us with that and delays our action too, but we just got to take that. We cannot do anything to stop that attack. But he has one special attack though, which I almost forgot, and that is that he can apply terror grip onto us, which is indicated like this. When you see this icon on your head, you want to make sure you attack Hoolay as fast as possible. Because when you have this icon on your head for 2 turns, we will be terrified. That means we cannot do anything for 1 turn. And we don't want to get to that point. So when you see this on our head, make sure you attack Hoolay once and it will just automatically go away. But I want you to remember this though. You can play with Saber, the free archer we are getting, and Pinon in this MOC. So if you have really difficulty clearing this MOC, I just recommend you to wait and summon for them if you plan on summoning for them, especially Pinon, since I think this Hoolay fight is made for Pinon, since the recommended weakness type to bring to his battle is physical and Pinon is physical. So I have no doubt that he will easily clear this battle against Hoolay. But if you're not sure whether you want to summon for Pinon or not, or Archer, or Saber or not, since Archer we're getting for free as we know, you can wait until the 29th of July, since the 3.6 drip marketing is to be expected by then. So you can make a more educated decision whether you want to summon for them or not. But also, on the 1st of August, the 3.5 livestream will be. So if you're still unsure who to summon for or not, there in that livestream they will go into more detail in the kits of those 2 new drip marketings we got recently. But the point is basically, just take your time, there is no haste in clearing this MOC. If you cannot get all the points, no worries, just build up your characters. You got literally 6 weeks for this MOC, just play with who you want to play. So I thank you for paying attention and see you the next time. Bye.